Little World. That was the name of the little hole-in-the-wall Chinese restaurant where my parents had their first date. She introduced him to Frank DeLima on cassettes that they listened to in her car before work. He didn't understand all of the jokes, so she would have to explain them to him. He didn't say it, but I imagine she didn't do a great job of explaining, especially through her own laughter. Laughter. That's what I think of when I think of my mother. She filled our home, our lives with the stuff. At least I know she got my dad laughing, enough to figure out 4 years later he couldn't live without her. They were married in a small chapel in Waipahu, where my mother grew up. They spent their honeymoon in Kauai and soon after had 2 little boys and were living in Seattle, expecting a little girl. Wednesday, May 17th, 2017. Happy birthday again, Sister Brown. You were born in Bellevue, and when everything was finally over, I left you and Mom in the hospital and I drove home alone. I had an entirely new outlook on the world. As I drove, I saw young men walking by the side of the road, maybe with their baggy pants and perhaps smoking, and all of a sudden I wished the world were a better place for my brand new daughter to live in. The little world my parents made for me was perfect. I spent the first couple of years in Seattle, but don't remember much of it. I remember Utah, though, living down the street from my 2 cousins, one a year older and one whose autism was subtle and not really important, but nonetheless always a part of my life. Afakasi. My world was made of 2 parts. My dad's world, quiet, reserved, picky eaters, measured words, writers, talkers, feelings, American individualism, I guess. My mom's world, the Samoan half, is where these cousins belonged, where I spent most of my days, adventurous, sporty, carefree, laughter, family, togetherness. When I was about 7 or 8, my little world shifted to make room for a visitor. Breast cancer, they called it. It had staked its claim on my mother's body, as it has on so many mothers. But it was a new word for me, one I didn't quite understand. I remember praying with all my little kid faith on the day of her first big operation. I had never seen her so tired. My mother fought hard for many, many years, but it never felt like a battle. She always made it seem so effortless. All the hair loss, the fatigue, the doctor's appointments and pills, the weird looks, the hard conversations, all of this she handled without losing her laughter. And so for a time our little world was happy, invincible it seemed. My older siblings, they turned to music, their true passion. Although we were all pretty close in age, my siblings bonded over music, video games, and friends, and were always out and about. By their teens, they had both been in a handful of bands, played shows, and had plans to move out and live on their own. My teenage years couldn't have been more different. Although I too had a passion for music, my mom didn't think it was right for me to be in a band with, quote, a bunch of sweaty teenage boys. I was quite a bit more shy, and much preferred staying home than going out, which was just fine with her, and that's how I spent most of my weekends, talking, laughing, watching reruns of The Mentalist or Law & Order, with my 2 best friends in the entire world. Needless to say, my family was pretty shocked when I told them I planned to move to Hawaii to attend college. I naively thought a new place would automatically make me happier. I quickly learned happiness isn't in places, it's in people. The change brought some difficult times, but with each new person I met, my little world grew a little bit bigger. These people I met would teach me phrases in different languages, and I felt certain I would go abroad for my mission. The call came, however, to San Diego, California, at the Mormon Battalion Historic Site. Within months, I was in a place I never thought I would be, wearing clothes I never thought I would wear, telling a story I had never really heard, but now I can never ever forget. A story of service, sacrifice, but especially of faith. And like their story, mine included much service, much sacrifice, and faith that sometimes seemed impossible to muster. And every day I served was another day my mom got sicker. She was always downplaying the pain, so when I walked off that escalator and saw her for the first time in 18 months, I was astonished at how frail she'd become. 3 months, not quite, is all I got with her after that. The cancer had spread to her brain, and it felt like the breath we'd all been holding in, all the fear and worry that had followed our family for years, was let out, only to be replaced by a sense of urgency. But like always, my mother carried on as though the diagnosis changed nothing. She kept laughing, kept teasing, kept loving as fiercely as she always had. The world of past tense. The weeks leading up to and the weeks that followed were cushioned with loved ones and hugs and funeral preparation, and so many family gatherings. But eventually the family left, the flowers stopped coming, the house was quiet, and we were left to work out this world of past tense, this world without her laughter, without her smile. It took me a 1.5 years to muster up the strength to go back to school. I told myself and others that I was staying behind to take care of my dad and be there for my family, and I was, but the truth is I just felt stuck. I didn't know how to get moving on with life again. At times I felt a little like a failure, like I should just get over it already, like I was wasting my time. I worked at a group home for people with autism, the same place my mother had worked at for several years previously. I learned to love those 4 guys with everything in me, and they taught me so much about the world, about life, about love. Sitting in my living room one day after work, I felt my Heavenly Father's warm words pierce my heart. You're not wasting your time, you're taking care of my most precious souls. Saturday, January 30th, 2021. Dear Mom, I met a really nice boy. He's really kind of a dork. I think you would have teased him a lot, but I think you would have liked him. He always makes me smile. He reminds me a lot of Dad. He always makes me laugh. I wore the most beautiful dress. I hope you would have liked it. I wish you could have seen it. I didn't wear shoes. Sorry, it just didn't feel right. I'm still learning how to live with grief, how to keep pushing forward, and how to be a better wife. I've had to fight hard to finish my education here at BYU Hawaii, the school that I love, this little corner of the universe so dear to my heart. In 2 semesters I will graduate, after beginning as a freshman here over 5 years ago. Although my plans for the future are not as specific or solidified as my bank account would probably want them to be, there are a few things I am certain of. I want to be a mother, I want to love as my mother and so many others have so diligently loved me. I want to write, I want to help people feel heard and understood and valued. This little world my parents built for me is exactly the kind of world I want to build for my children, and it's the kind of world we are building, by learning everything we can, laughing every day, praying, crying, trying, fighting, hoping, messing up and trying again, listening, loving, and trusting that there's so much more to come.